Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. Today, we'll be delving into a case that shocked both China and Singapore. Huang, an adorable 8-year-old girl, mysteriously disappeared on the island nation. After her disappearance, thousands of people took part in one of the largest search efforts ever seen. And when the truth was finally revealed, the public was outraged by what the perpetrator had done. To express their sorrow, many people voluntarily attended her funeral, sending her favorite candy as a tribute. However, as the investigation unfolded, a surprising number of people began to sympathize with the perpetrator in a baffling turn of events. So, what was the final truth? We'll take you back to Singapore in 2004 to uncover what really happened. Singapore has long been regarded as an exceptionally clean, civilized country with the highest security standards in the region. But despite its safety, Huang, a young Chinese immigrant just 8 years old, suddenly disappeared, causing a media frenzy. Huang was born on September 26, 1996, into a modest family in China who worked hard to make ends meet. However, the reality was that Huang's family consisted only of her mother, as her father had left them to work illegally in Singapore as a fruit packer before she was born. During his time away, Huang's father started an affair with another woman, ultimately leading to a divorce. A few years later, her mother found a new husband, and Huang had a younger half-sibling. By the time Huang was in the early years of elementary school, Singapore had introduced policies to support immigration in order to attract talent. Not wanting to miss out on the opportunity for a better education for her daughter, Huang's mother, Shuying, discussed with her husband and agreed to send Huang to Singapore to study. This decision, however, cost the family a significant amount of money and effort. So, at just 7 years old, Huang followed her mother's arrangement and moved nearly 3,100 miles away from her hometown in Fujian to Singapore, where she enrolled at Jin Tai Primary School, one of the most expensive schools in Singapore at the time. Of course, no mother would feel comfortable letting her child live alone in a foreign place. So, Huang's mother decided to stay with her and occasionally flew back to Fujian to care for her younger child with her second husband. In this new country, Huang's mother made a living by opening a produce stall at a market near her daughter's school, and she also rented the space above the stall where the two could rest when needed. As her mother began selling produce, the people in the market and regular customers grew fond of the cheerful 7-year-old, always full of energy and with a sweet smile on her face. Knowing that her family's situation wasn't as fortunate as many of her classmates, Huang was exceptionally understanding and well-behaved. She never asked her mother for anything and became a source of emotional support, giving her mother the motivation to keep working. When they had free time to spend together, Huang would often tell her mother, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll study hard and become a doctor so I can earn lots of money and take care of you, so you won't have to work so hard anymore." But whether it was becoming a doctor or anything else, Huang would never have the chance to achieve her dreams. On September 27, 2004, after celebrating a cozy birthday with Huang, her mother, Shuying, packed her bags for a 2-week trip back to Fujian to visit her younger child. During this time, Huang had to stay behind in Singapore to avoid missing school. Given Huang's unique situation, with her mother frequently flying between Singapore and Fujian, it was quite normal for her to take care of herself. She handled her own meals, bathed at public bathhouses, and even flew alone back home for summer vacations. Everyone who knew the mother and daughter duo admired the independence and maturity of this 8-year-old girl. So, when her mother left for this trip, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for the two of them. Before leaving, Huang's mother entrusted her daughter's care to a roommate named Li Shu-kan and gave her 100 Singapore dollars to manage her own expenses during the 2 short weeks. On October 10th, nearly 2 weeks after her mother had left, Huang sweetly told her aunt, Li Shu-kan, that she wanted to call her mom. Since this was a common request whenever Huang missed her mother, her aunt had no concerns about letting her go alone. Around 1:30 p.m., after informing her aunt, Huang quickly went to the nearby payphone to call her mother. She skillfully dialed the number, and as soon as she heard her mother's voice on the other end, she excitedly began sharing everything that had happened in the days since her mother had left. She also mentioned that she needed an electronic English dictionary and a new pair of sandals, since her current ones were worn out. Her mother cheerfully agreed to buy these things for her and promised to bring them when she returned to Singapore. She also advised Huang Na to be patient for a few more days, as her work at home wasn't finished, and the trip might be extended. After a brief 6-minute phone call, Huang Na seemed a little sad, as she missed her mother terribly. As for her mother, Huang Shuying, if she had known this would be the last time she would ever hear her daughter's voice, she might have talked to her for a little longer. By around 2:30 p.m., an hour had passed, and Huang Na still hadn't returned. Li Shukan began to feel a sense of unease. How could making a phone call take so long? A gut feeling told her something was wrong. She immediately went to the nearby payphone where Huang Na had called her mother, but the little girl was nowhere to be found. A wave of fear slowly began to wash over Li Shukan, filling her mind with dread. She frantically searched everywhere, scouring the market where Huang Na's mother sold produce, and even went to her school, but there was no trace of the girl. Unable to bear the anxiety any longer, Li Shukan sought help from friends and acquaintances. More than 20 people joined the search, combing through nearby areas, but there was still no sign of her. Exhausted by 10 p.m., Li and the others finally turned to the police for help and informed Huang Na's mother in Fujian. Immediately, Huang Shuying dropped everything at home and caught the earliest flight back to Singapore to search for her eldest daughter. Once the police took on the case, they didn't waste a second, launching an investigation and interviewing those involved. According to reports, the last time Huang Na was seen was when she left home to make the phone call. She was wearing a jacket, blue shorts, and had short dark hair. Additionally, it was confirmed that Huang Na was just an 8-year-old girl with a sweet, cheerful personality. Her mother, since arriving in Singapore, hadn't had any conflicts with anyone, not even minor disagreements. Both mother and daughter were remembered by others as kind, gentle, and friendly, so the police quickly ruled out the possibility of her disappearance being an act of revenge. Furthermore, Singapore is very small, with a total area of only about 270 square miles, and Huang Na was very familiar with the surroundings where she lived, making it highly unlikely that she got lost. After eliminating all other possibilities, only one scenario remained. The most dreaded one. Huang Na had been kidnapped. With the investigation strategy quickly established, the police began focusing on the wholesale market where Huang Na's mother worked, questioning everyone who was present that day. It wasn't long before they got their first lead on the missing girl. Ms. Lin, an employee at a cafe in the plaza near the wholesale market, told the police that she had seen Huang Na that afternoon. The girl was wearing a jacket and blue shorts but wasn't wearing any shoes. Ms. Lin said she asked Huang Na why she wasn't wearing shoes, but the girl didn't answer. She just smiled sweetly and skipped away. Several other people in the market also reported seeing Huang Na that afternoon. They said she had been with a man they were all familiar with. They agreed he was a young man, only in his early 20s, who wasn't particularly bright and worked a simple job packing goods. He frequently spent time with Huang Na and was very fond of her, treating her like his little niece. Following these leads from the market vendors, the police quickly found the young man, who was identified as Tuk Leng Hao, a worker who packed goods at the market. When the police informed him they were questioning him about the disappearance of Huang Na on October 10th, Tuk Leng Hao responded with genuine surprise. He admitted that he had seen her that day and even gave her 2 mangoes, telling her not to wander around and to go straight home. Given his cooperative and honest demeanor, showing no signs of deception, the police gradually dismissed their suspicions and allowed him to go home. During this time, while the police were actively investigating, Huang Na's mother wasn't sitting idly either. For days after arriving on October 12th, she printed stacks of flyers with her daughter's face on them, handing them to every passerby on the street, constantly asking if anyone had seen or heard about her daughter. But that wasn't all. Huang Shuying didn't allow herself even a moment of rest. She searched construction sites and water pipes, tirelessly walking from dawn until long past midnight every day, never stopping, fueled by the faint hope that she might find her daughter and bring her home. During those relentless days of searching, a niece called Huang Shuying and told her about a strange dream she had, Huang Na is trapped on a mountain. Although it was only a spiritual or symbolic occurrence, and often these things have no real-world significance. In her desperate state, Huang Na's mother couldn't dismiss any possibility. For many days, despite being physically and emotionally exhausted, she carried her daughter's picture and her favorite teddy bear, hiking up the tallest mountains in search of her child. During this period, Huang Shuying was no longer alone in her search. Reporters followed her, but so did strangers, touched by the story of the mother and daughter who were willing to scour all of Singapore to help. At that point, nearly the entire country was involved in a large-scale search for Huang Na, attracting everyone from business people to retirees, taxi drivers, and many others. One person even offered a reward of 10,000 Singapore dollars for any leads, and another added an additional 5,000 Singapore dollars. Of course, the search teams distributed news, photos, and flyers about the girl's mysterious disappearance far and wide. The search grew so large that even Singapore's neighboring country, Malaysia, got involved. Some Malaysians joined the search, and a few restaurants near the Singapore border hung posters urging people to look for Huang Na. In just a few days, the number of people participating in the search skyrocketed. A total of 70,000 flyers were printed and distributed, but despite all efforts, there was no sign of Huang Na. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. At this point, everything seemed to take a sudden turn when the police decided to reinvestigate, examining all leads and individuals involved, including Tuk Leng Hao. When they brought him in for a second round of questioning, his story changed entirely, raising the police's suspicions. In his second statement, he claimed, "I know where Huang Na is. She was kidnapped by a group of 3 or 4 Chinese men who threatened her." He explained that this was a result of unresolved conflicts that Huang Na's mother had with others at the market, leading to her daughter's abduction as an act of revenge. After providing this information, Tuk Leng Hao even volunteered to help the police by using his connections to contact the group and negotiate Huang Na's release. However, he explained that since he was summoned to the police station too early, he didn't have his phone and needed to return home to retrieve it. Though skeptical, the police agreed and assigned 2 officers to escort him back to his home. After retrieving his phone, they quickly placed him in a car to return to the station for a lie detector test. But at that very moment, something happened that was beyond the police's control. Tuk Leng Hao took advantage of the police's trust. While being escorted, he requested a stop at a restaurant on Pasir Panjang Road, claiming he was hungry. After pretending to go to the restroom, he slipped away unnoticed. When the police realized he hadn't come out for a long time, they panicked and understood that Tuk Leng Hao had built their trust only to use it as a means for his escape. Naturally, when a suspect flees during transport, the police must immediately give chase and call for backup to set up a perimeter as quickly as possible. The same happened with Tuk Leng Hao. However, no matter how many officers they mobilized or how intensively they searched, they couldn't catch him. Tuk Leng Hao seemed to have vanished without a trace. The obvious question at this point was, where had he gone, and why did he run? Before we find out what happened to him, let's take a step back and explore who Tuk Leng Hao really was. Tuk Leng Hao was born on December 16, 1981, in Penang, Malaysia. He was the second of 4 children in a financially struggling family. He lived in Malaysia with his family until the age of 8, when he decided to leave home and move to Singapore to seek better job opportunities. However, things didn't go as planned. Without any qualifications, Tuk Leng Hao could only find manual labor jobs. After some time in Singapore, he met a Chinese-Indonesian woman, and they quickly got married and had a son together. It was during this time that Huang Na and her mother met Tuk Leng Hao. When they moved to Singapore, they rented a small room in the same building where Tuk Leng Hao lived. From then on, Tuk Leng Hao and Huang Na became familiar with each other, developing a close bond as if they were uncle and niece. He would often ride his motorcycle to pick Huang Na up, taking her out for fun, buying her small gifts, and treating her to meals at various restaurants in Singapore. Because of this, it wasn't just Huang Na who let her guard down. Her mother did too. She trusted and liked Tuk Leng Hao. When the police informed her that he was the prime suspect in her daughter's disappearance, she couldn't believe her ears. She kept saying, "No, it can't be him," and repeatedly asked the police if there had been a mistake. However, the Singapore police were confident in their suspicions, and after Tuk Leng Hao's unexpected escape, their doubts were only further reinforced. Let's take a moment to consider the geography of Singapore at the time of Tuk Leng Hao's escape. Singapore is the smallest country in Southeast Asia, and by land, the only place he could have fled to was Malaysia, his home country. As soon as Tuk Leng Hao's escape was discovered, the Singapore police contacted Malaysian authorities for assistance in tracking him down. The Malaysian police reached out to all of Tuk Leng Hao's family members in Malaysia, including his parents and siblings. Tuk Leng Hao's father, who was 62 years old at the time, told the police very honestly that he had received a phone call from his second son after his escape. In that brief call, Tuk Leng Hao said, "I didn't kidnap Huang Na. I ran away because I couldn't handle the pressure from the police." When the police arrived at their home, even Tuk Leng Hao's older brother couldn't believe his brother was the prime suspect in such a horrific crime. To him, Tuk Leng Hao was a shy person who never even had the nerve to ask for a loan, and he had never been involved in a fight. For someone like that, the idea of kidnapping a child sounded like a far-fetched story. As for the Singapore police, they quickly reached out to Tuk Leng Hao's wife, who was still living in Singapore. She provided the police with similar information to what his father had told Malaysian authorities. Tuk Leng Hao had called her as well, insisting he hadn't kidnapped the girl. However, in his call to his wife, he gave one crucial piece of information. After escaping from the police, he had taken a taxi to the border between Singapore and Malaysia, then continued by bus to Johor, Malaysia. Despite his family's hopes that he would explain what was happening, and even with the cooperation between the two neighboring countries, no further progress seemed to be made. That is, until October 30th, 10 days after his last interrogation and 20 days after the crime, when he voluntarily turned himself into the police in Penang, Malaysia. After receiving the news from Malaysia that Tuk Leng Hao had surrendered and was in custody, Singapore police immediately sent an investigative team to bring him back for further questioning. Realizing he had no way out, Tuk Leng Hao confessed to everything that had happened. On October 31st, a team of over 20 investigators led Tuk Leng Hao to the location where he claimed he had disposed of Huang Na's body, on a hill in Teluk Blangah Hill Park, just about a 10-minute drive from the wholesale market where her mother worked. After about 30 minutes of searching the area that Tuk Leng Hao had pointed out, officers noticed a foul smell near a withered bush. Upon digging into the shallow soil, they uncovered a cardboard box tightly sealed with tape. Some thick, oily liquid was seeping from the edges and corners of the box, but no other signs were found, indicating that this was just the burial site and not the location of the crime. The box was immediately taken to the forensic center for examination. Forensic experts determined that it was a packing box taken from the place where Tuk Leng Hao worked. Inside the cardboard box were 9 layers of plastic. After peeling away all the material, they found the severely decomposed and unrecognizable body of a small girl whom we all knew for certain was Huang Na. Following standard procedure, the forensics team conducted a DNA comparison with Huang Na's mother, Huang Shuying, to confirm the identity. The heartbreaking results showed that the body was indeed Huang Na, the little girl they had been searching for all this time. While the forensic team worked on their final report, the police didn't sit idly by. During one interrogation, Tuk Leng Hao gave a statement claiming that Huang Na's death was entirely accidental. He said they had been playing hide-and-seek in the warehouse, but instead of a regular game, he tied her hands and feet before hiding. Tuk Leng Hao explained, "I just wanted to make the game more fun by having her untie herself before she could come find me." However, the physical evidence told a different story. The forensic doctors spoke on behalf of the victim. Their report showed that the direct cause of Huang Na's death was acute airway obstruction. The problem, however, was that since Huang Na had been attacked so long ago and her body was wrapped in 9 layers of plastic bags, it was impossible to determine exactly when the suffocation occurred. Aside from the acute airway obstruction, her face also showed signs of trauma of various degrees to the head, particularly the back of her skull. Due to the body being buried in damp soil for so long, it was difficult to determine which injuries were caused by specific blows. Additionally, When the medical team examined her gastrointestinal tract to estimate the time of death, they found partially digested mangoes in her stomach. There was also evidence of vomit in her mouth, and her rectal area contained fecal matter. Coupled with Tuk Leng Hao's statement that he saw her experiencing convulsions, there were two possible explanations for her condition. Either she suffered an epileptic seizure, or the convulsions were the result of external trauma. But that wasn't all. What made this case even more perplexing was that when Huang Na's body was found, she wasn't wearing any clothes in the cardboard box. Additionally, her private area showed clear signs of assault, with visible scratches and bleeding. It became evident that Tuk Leng Hao was not particularly intelligent or skilled in evading suspicion, as he continued to deny his crime during police interviews. In one recorded statement, he claimed that after tying Huang Na up in the room and hiding, he heard a loud thud from where she was tied. When he rushed back into the room, she began vomiting blood, having convulsions, and losing control of her bodily functions. Tuk Leng Hao explained that he panicked, his mind went blank, and although he wanted to untie her, he was unable to do so. At that moment, he recalled a first aid technique he had seen online, which suggested applying pressure to the side of the neck in such situations. He immediately attempted this. When using his hands didn't work, he said he laid her on her side and used his foot to press on her neck. Unfortunately, Huang Na did not survive. Continuing his statement, Tuk Leng Hao tried to explain the injuries in her private area. According to him, after his misguided attempts at first aid failed, he saw that things were getting worse. He removed her jacket and placed it over her face to cover her wide-open, clouding eyes in an attempt to ease his fear. Though he couldn't explain why he removed her pants, Tuk Leng Hao claimed that he was patting her back with his right hand while his left hand somehow ended up in an area he couldn't identify as either her genital or anal region. All he knew was that when he withdrew his hand, there was significant bleeding from her lower body. Regarding the location where Tuk Leng Hao and Huang Na played hide-and-seek, police followed his testimony and went to a warehouse divided into 3 rooms on the 15th floor of the wholesale market where her mother worked. In this room, police found Huang Na's DNA, including hair and blood, as well as cigarette butts with Tuk Leng Hao's saliva and adhesive tape containing his fingerprints. Additionally, there were fibers from the clothes both the perpetrator and the victim were wearing that day, confirming that this was the crime scene. When the case went to trial at Singapore's High Court on July 11, 2005, the prosecution charged Tuk Leng Hao with murder. They presented evidence from 76 witnesses, a variety of physical evidence, and a video reenactment in which Tuk Leng Hao demonstrated the events. Based on forensic reports, the prosecution summarized the case as follows. At around 1:40 p.m. on October 10, 2004, Tuk Leng Hao lured Huang Na into the warehouse on the 15th floor of Block 13 at the wholesale market under the pretense of playing hide-and-seek. Once inside, after eating mangoes, Huang Na was stripped of her clothes, tied up with rope, and sexually assaulted. To silence her, the defendant suffocated her by pressing his hands over her mouth and nose until she went limp and lifeless. He then stomped and kicked her head multiple times to ensure she was no longer able to resist. Next, he wrapped her body in 9 layers of plastic bags, placed it inside a cardboard box, and sealed it with tape. After completing the packaging, around 5:30 p.m., he borrowed a colleague's motorcycle, returned to his apartment, and went about his day as usual. It wasn't until about 8 p.m. that he took the box containing Huang Na's body to Telok Blangah Hill Park, where he hastily buried it. He returned the motorcycle to his colleague around 9 p.m. Faced with these charges, Tuk Leng Hao remained silent throughout the trial. However, his lawyer pointed out 2 arguments that could either prove his innocence or at least reduce his sentence. According to the defense attorney, while the prosecution had evidence, witnesses, and the defendant's own statements, there was no direct proof that Tuk Leng Hao was the one who caused Huang Na to stop breathing. To clarify further, as mentioned earlier, it could not be conclusively determined whether Huang Na's airway obstruction was due to being suffocated by having her mouth and nose covered or from inhaling vomit during a seizure. and even the cause of the seizure itself could not be definitively attributed to external trauma or an epileptic episode, as seizures can sometimes occur spontaneously, even if the family had no history of epilepsy. Additionally, Tuk Leng Hao's defense team of 5 lawyers brought in a psychiatrist to testify about his mental instability. According to this psychiatrist, Tuk Leng Hao exhibited symptoms consistent with schizophrenia, such as a lack of emotional response to Huang Na's death and delusional thoughts, like inventing a story about 3 Chinese men kidnapping the victim. Moreover, when his IQ was tested, Tuk Leng Hao's score was only 76, significantly lower than the average IQ in Malaysia at the time, about 92, in Singapore, about 105, and even lower than the global average IQ in 2004, which was around 83. However, bringing in a psychiatrist didn't seem to help the defense. The prosecution quickly countered, stating that while Tuk Leng Hao's IQ appeared to be well below average, mental impairment is typically only recognized when the IQ is below 70. Furthermore, neither he nor his family had any history of mental illness. The prosecution also pointed out that Tuk Leng Hao's behavior before and after the crime showed no noticeable differences, indicating that he had a very steady psychological state. Another critical point was how he disposed of evidence to cover up his crime. Instead of discarding Huang Na's clothes in the market trash bins, he chose to dispose of them in a location without cameras, showing calculated effort in concealing his actions. After wrapping the victim in 9 layers of plastic bags and placing her in a cardboard box, Tuk Leng Hao remained calm enough to carefully seal the box with tape. When the police questioned him for the first time, he was fully aware that his actions were wrong and needed to be concealed, which is why he was able to lie to the police without hesitation. He even had the presence of mind to steal a police officer's pass to flee from Singapore to Malaysia. As for his capacity and motive for the crime, when police investigated Tuk Leng Hao's workplace, both his superiors and colleagues mentioned that he had previously tied up a girl with rope to intimidate her because he found her noisy and annoying. Additionally, his relationship with Huang Na wasn't always peaceful, as there were a few occasions when he became so angry that he physically hit her. Therefore, it's not unreasonable to suspect that on that day, Huang Na might have done something that triggered him to act violently again. After intense court proceedings on August 27, 2005, Tuk Leng Hao was found guilty and sentenced to death. In January 2006, he filed an appeal. The case was reviewed again, but the original sentence was upheld. However, his family could not accept the verdict and filed for clemency with the president of Singapore. After waiting for over 8 months, their efforts were in vain, and the sentence was carried out on November 3, 2006. As for Huang Na, her funeral was attended by many people who brought flowers, snacks, and her favorite Hello Kitty toys to send her off to her final resting place. But if the story ended there, we would miss a highly controversial postscript. After the case was closed, instead of fading from public attention, negative stories about Huang Na's mother, Huang Shuying, began surfacing online. Going back to the time when Huang Shuying divorced her first husband, she had come to Singapore on a short-term visa. However, she overstayed her visa to work illegally, was eventually arrested, sentenced to prison, and deported back to her home country after serving her sentence. However, the thought of leaving behind a developed country like Singapore and returning to the rural areas of Fujian, with fewer opportunities to earn a living, was too difficult for Huang Shuying to accept. A fellow inmate reportedly advised her to burn off her fingerprints by pressing all 10 of her fingers against a red-hot iron bar, making it impossible for authorities to trace her. Later, when she learned that Singapore had introduced policies to attract skilled talent, she paid 8,000 Singapore dollars to a human trafficking syndicate to illegally re-enter Singapore. However, Huang Na, having no criminal record, was still able to enter Singapore legally. After this dark chapter in Huang Shuying's past was revealed, the police immediately investigated and confirmed the story to be true. Huang Shuying was forced to return to Fujian with her daughter Huang Na's ashes, but the story didn't end there. Rumors circulated online about Huang Na's mother and stepfather's circumstances after returning to Fujian, painting a very different picture than what the public had imagined. It was said that during the investigation into Huang Na's case, many people had donated money and goods in support of the family. Allegedly, this money was used to build a 4-story mansion, complete with a large garage on a small man-made hill, as well as many other luxurious amenities. Upon learning of this, many people began to express support for Tukleng Hao, believing they had been wrong to side with Huang Shuying. Some even speculated that the entire incident had been orchestrated by Huang Shuying and her husband. Many criticized her for being an irresponsible mother, allowing her 8-year-old daughter to become so independent and leaving her alone in Singapore while she comfortably traveled back to China. In response to these accusations, Huang Shuying claimed that most of the donated money was used to build a proper resting place for her daughter, Huang Na. She also mentioned that their home had only been expanded by 1 floor to provide a view of Huang Na's gravesite. Additionally, the remaining funds were donated to improve infrastructure in their village and to support charitable organizations, aiming to spread positive values to more people. However, the controversy surrounding the couple continued to escalate. But no matter what the truth may be, the fact remains that little Huang Na's life was tragically cut short at just 8 years old. It's a heartbreaking and unfortunate case, regardless of how the details unfold, and that's where I'll end my coverage of this case. What do you think about this case? Please share your thoughts in the comments below so we can discuss it together. Goodbye.